Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. First off, start off the videos here. I have a few ideas for some videos I want to put out this week so I can have them up for next week. I still have the Star Ocean 5 playthrough to put up. On top of that, I have a few Final Fantasy 14 videos I want to make. And the reminder, we have an announcement coming sometime in the next week or two. On top of that, we have I Am Setsuna and Deep Dungeon coming on July 19th, so we're expecting an extra long stream that day on top of State of the Realm. Of course, we do that every Tuesday. No exceptions. No, it's not true. But anyway, I just want to make sure we have those videos up on the side. I'm a little bit smaller than I was last week, so I don't take up the entire screen. You get more of Dwayne. You like it? You like more of Dwayne? But this is episode 100. So at the end of the last episode, 99, I asked people to send in any video questions they may have wanted to have answered. So we got 3 video questions. I'm going to start Mondays with Mr. Happy with those 3 video questions. So I'm not going to have the little box in the bottom right. I'm just going to legit cut to the person's question, and then we're going to cut back to me and I'll answer it. All right? So let's get started with that.
Hey, Mr. Happy, it's Aqua here. Here to do a question for week 100. Here's a first-time bonus like everybody else, so you get 12 lore. Anyway, so my question is, do you think that a mega weapon could be the next endgame raid for the next expansion? I think it could be. I know they're wanting to put a mega weapon in there somewhere, but I think that would probably be a good thing. Kind of like how Alex is now, other than Alex's storyline's not really all that good. I think they can do something with Omega like that. But, you know, next expansion, alright. Also, quit ragging on people that get strategy guides, because I got a strategy guide right here. It's actually completely worthless, other than, you know, for collectors. So, either way, it looks good. Also, I challenge you to do the 3rd iteration of Ethereal Queen with 129 million health. Anyway, that's my question. I will see you at FanFest.
All right, so that was the first video question. Thank you for that one. So 3 very important points I got to hit on that one. The first one, do I think Omega Weapon will be the raid? It's a tough call because a lot of Omega's kind of a reference point of the main story right now, but they've referenced things in the main story and then completely put them off to side stories. I mean, Bahamut was literally like the finale of 2.0 ends with Bahamut's roar, and it makes you think it's going to be this huge important primary storyline. It just completely gets sidetracked to Alice A and Urian J. So Omega is pretty large, and I guess the whole idea, the fact that Omega is kind of weak and inactive right now, it pretty much follows the formula of the other two. I mean, Bahamut was regenerating Alexander. They've been slowly, you know, turning on different aspects of him. So it kind of fits that, like, we need to stop it before it's kind of out of control. You know, I'm kind of against us having just one major theme of all the raids like we did before. Like the theme of the expansion is okay for me to use as a raid, but just using one environment and kind of changing it up slightly, I think we could deal with kind of the way like the Lost City does it, where we go to different places. So even if Omega is the raid, which I don't think he will be actually, I would like to see us go to a greater variety of areas when we're going into a raid. Just not something that looks the same, but just slightly different kind of every single time we go in. As for strategy guides, you said it yourself, completely worthless. So, I don't know, you kind of made my point right there. And finally, the challenge to do 129 million Ethereal Queen. The problem with that is not so much that it's difficult. With the Dead Man Walking roll, Dead Man Walking, and I can't remember the name of the roll that makes you generate, I think it's 5% of your maximum health on basic attacks. I mean, that kind of takes all the challenge out of Star Ocean 5's optional bosses. It's just a matter of how quickly you can do them at that point. You pretty much go Instigator, Dead Man Walking, and one roll that allows you to heal on basic attack, and you pretty much win the entire game. Like, there's no way to lose at that point unless you're, like, trying to keep all 7 people alive and you accidentally let the Dead Man Walking guy go down. So, as much as I would love to take on the challenge, that's a lot of time to go through just for that one strategy that we already know will work, to dedicate the time to that. So it probably won't, because I don't think it will be an actual challenge. I think it's just a matter of how long it takes me to get there. All right, with that out of the way, let's move on to the second video question.
So, Peps, your bonus, have some hair so you can finally dye it. You get to choose color. Simple question, how far along would you like to see Deep Dungeon become? Would you like to see something sort of akin to Mystery Dungeon, where it's all puzzles and turn-based or whatever it is, or something more akin to Tartarus, where if you're in a certain area for so long, you're screwed because the Reaper's coming to eat you. It's really all I'm interested in. Well, how far would you like to see it go? You answer it?
All right, so I think I get what you mean when you ask me how far do I want Deep Dungeon to go. I think it's more of an idea of how complex do I want it to be. Do I want it to be something where you can kind of go in there and spend hours even if you don't necessarily have any direction? Or do you want it to be something that you have to make reasonable progress in? I like the idea of floors having a time limit, but not on every floor. I kind of like the idea of occasionally having a floor where, okay, clear all these enemies in 3 minutes or something happens. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a you lose because there's so many things that could go into that. But it would still be nice to have that occasional sort of boost of anxiety because it adds a bit more flavor to the dungeon itself. So more options is always good. And as for what kind of challenges we see in there, I'm kind of not expecting much challenge from the first 50 floors. Even Yoshi P himself has not said much about the first 50 floors. He says that you could do it with 4 DPS. Like, we already know that kind of any content that's doable by 4 DPS, even though he says specifically with the correct use of items, we kind of already have an idea of what to expect. Like, you already know 4 warriors going to roll right through that. I mean, obviously, you won't roll right through it right in the early levels, but you have a better chance of doing it at the early levels with 4. And then you also have a lot of the self-sustain of, like, Dragoons, and then Monks have Bloodbath, and Ninjas we just have Second Wind. So Monk and Dragoon in that case. Machinists wouldn't probably be too good in that setup, but they're ranged DPS anyway. So I would just like to see them, kind of like I want with the Aquapolis, I want them to add more unique challenges to it, like Aquapolis has one boss. Like, I want to make sure that there's not just one boss, and it's the same boss over and over again when we go into Deep Dungeon. So I'm hoping to see some variety in there, not just a straight up kill enemies, pick up chests, move to the next floor. Although I have a feeling for this initial iteration, since it's kind of going with making the items and the occasional debuffs and things that happen to you when you go onto a floor, I think they'll start with that and then maybe expand on the ideas a little bit later. All right, and let's move on to the third video question for the 100th episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy.
Hello guys, Razor the Mono here from the Lamia server. Shout outs to everyone on there. As a bonus today, everyone gets all the Umbrites for their animal weapon quests. Now my question is, what do you think the fight with the Warriors of Darkness will be like? I'm assuming it'll be similar to the fight I think is in Holotally hard mode, where we fight the different classes. But what kind of mechanics do you think we'll see? And comparing a hard mode version to the extreme, what will be the differences? And how hard do you think the fight will be compared to fights that we have now?
All right, so first of all, thank you for all the Umbrites, because I still have a second anima weapon to finish as we speak. As for the Warrior of Darkness fight, that'll almost definitely be a story mode encounter for the first time, so I expect the difficulty of the Warrior of Darkness fight initially to be very akin to what we have for Nidhogg and Sephiroth hard mode, along that line of difficulty. Basically something people groan at in the trial roulette all the time. Oh, I joined it in the trial roulette. The healer died immediately to the first AoE. The black mage he wasn't even using Fire 4. Like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Like, I expect it to be like that, even though that has nothing to do with the mechanics of the fight. As for how the fight will go, I mean, I most of the time think of it as kind of, the thing is, I don't want to compare it to the Archangels of 11 because it won't work like that. The way the Archangels worked was ridiculous in the terms of just how it went. I don't think we'll fight them one at a time necessarily, but I have a feeling that it won't just be like one tank is holding 4 enemies and like one of them is randomly attacking everyone else. It'll probably be more along the lines of the warrior. It is a fight that probably for 5 versus 8, and you'll probably have to deal with primarily the Warrior of Darkness, it's hard to imagine because with only 8 people, 8 versus 5 is kind of strange in this game. So unless they make it a fight where CC actually works, that's the most important thing. I'm trying to rule out them actually making CC work. Like, oh, you can sleep the Healer of Darkness, or you can stun the what's it called? The Black Mage of Darkness. The Paladin of Darkness is, can cover the other party members, so you have to drag him away from other party members or something like that, or he prioritizes running next to other party members, or the Warrior of Darkness can home gang one of your DPS or one of your healers into the group for another one to AoE. It's a lot of combo attacks, I imagine, something like that. And I imagine it mostly being, as people are saying, it's the front lines of the Warrior and the Paladin mostly protecting the rest of the party. How they work that into mechanics, there's a lot of ways they can with the tools that Warriors themselves actually have. It's just a question of how far they're willing to go and how they do that in a hard mode and people still not complain about it like they did with Steps of Faith and Nidhogg normal mode. Then it comes to the extreme mode, and I imagine that they get a lot of unique attacks and a lot of new attacks. Maybe they exclude certain attacks out of the normal mode. Obviously, Paladin and Warrior, I imagine tank swapping between the two, and I expect that the White Mage kind of just supports them and occasionally maybe runs into the group and does like Swiftcast Holy. I'm wondering if they would make the White Mage able to res party members if the White Mage is alive when one of them dies. There's so many different things you can go to, and it's one of those ideas that they need to kind of not play it safe, because it's really easy to make a fight like that and make it really easy, but what's difficult is making a fight like that and then making it moderately hard and then making it, as they call it, an extremely hard. So it's definitely going to be interesting seeing that fight balance out, but it's definitely going to be a 5-on-8. I don't see it happening any other way, because whatever they do not make it like a trial where Heidelin has blessed us with a ton of power and with 1 versus 5 and we just shit all over them, and don't make it a fight with me, Thancred, Y'shtola, and like, I don't know, friggin' Papalimo or whatever. Just don't make it me and the Scions versus the Warrior of Darkness. Make it like a real trial. If you're going to do that first, at least make it a real trial later. All right, and on that note, that's going to wrap up the 3 video questions we got there. That was pretty fun. Those were fairly decent questions. I may open that venue up again in the future, people to do video questions or to submit video questions, because I feel like that worked pretty well. We'll talk about that more at the end of the video, though, because we do have some questions over on the Dream Network forums to get to for our 100th episode. So, very first question is what looks like a repeat question. Hey, Mr. Happy, same question as 2 weeks ago. You didn't have the time to answer, forgot to repost. Has Square Enix explained why all blue gear now have materia? Oh, have materia slots on. Oh, because they wanted materia to be more useful. Materia was pretty useless, pretty much. If you didn't either craft or gather, where it's always been useful, like there's never been an argument about it being useful in crafting and gathering, but in combat it was pretty much crafted gear before that patch was significantly lower item level than even the gear that was being made new that patch. It was pretty much equivalent to like old gear that you had, but it had materia meld, so it was clearly superior in a lot of ways. By adding materia slots to the blue gear, you can buy kind of that advantage early, or you can choose to actually go into like Alexander and get something equivalent that has some materia slots, so it's not entirely outclassed. Basically bridging the gap between people who want to spend a truckload of money on gear versus people who want to earn their gear over time. One's a shorter method, one's a longer method. One is slightly stronger, sorry for hitting the microphone. And there are pros and cons to the system, but ultimately it made materia more useful. All right, next question. Hey, Mr. Happy. I was wondering if you heard about any changes coming to Fisher. Are you aware that Fisher is the only job with consumables and takes up loads of inventory space with all your baits and lures? Yeah, so they actually have mentioned a tackle box. I think they said they're working on it, but they're currently focused on, instead of just focusing on the tackle box, they want to greatly increase all inventory slots across all players. So it is something on their radar, but they first want to focus on the increase of everybody who's playing, as opposed to just tackling, no pun intended, the fishers who are having trouble with that don't have this tackle box or this bait box or whatever you want to call it. It's likely to happen at some point, though. All right, sorry about the questions cutting off on the first 2. Well, I guess the first 2 written ones, they were, well, the first one it wasn't. The second one it was because of the spacing. But regardless, sorry for the cutoff right there. Anyway, next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, longtime viewer, first time asker for your bonus. Have any animal weapon? Can I get that machinist one so I don't have to do the quest? Please, just please. Hopefully this question doesn't seem too out there, lol. All right, now I'm quite interested. When I play certain games for an extended period of time, my eyes tend to get irritated, making it much more difficult to focus on what I'm doing. If I had to describe the feeling, I would say that it feels my eyes are literally on fire. This doesn't happen with every game, but I've noticed it happening with 14 much more than any other game. Since you stream a lot, I thought I'd ask if you ever had to deal with irritated eyes. Oh yeah, that's what these are for. Everyone always asks me, why do I have these? Why don't I use like F.Lux? These are Gunner glasses. The reason why I have them is I used to work in New York City, and I used to look at maybe 15 to 20 different computer screens every day at least. And so I wasn't going to install F.Lux on all of them, so I walked over to Best Buy, bought a pair of these, and I haven't looked back. I've had these for well over 3 years at this point. So yeah, I ran into the same issue. It didn't matter what I was really doing, but in games where you really need to focus, that's where your eyes are more likely to strain themselves, especially when you're playing it for long periods of time. So I've absolutely run into that issue often. I don't run into them that much anymore, though. I keep my face a little bit farther back from the screen. I'm still very much a kind of person where I'm just like looking at the screen like super close, but I try to keep my distance a little bit more now and make sure that the resolutions are something that's comfortable for my eyes to look at. Plus these makes it a whole lot easier. You don't, like I said, you don't need to get these. You can use F.Lux if you're just on a computer, but I love these things, and they work well for me, so I'm going to keep using them. All right, next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, here's 2 raid-related questions for you. All right, a major gripe I have with 8-mans is they don't feel connected due to each boss being instanced separately. I share the feeling. Trust me, I share the feeling. They feel like trials. They feel like more like trials and raids now. So, what are your thoughts on making 8-man raids design like the 24-mans with a checkpoint system? So, ultimately, they need to develop the checkpoint system. That's the biggest thing they have right here. They've explained before why they have it separated into so many instances. I know that one of the reasons back in the day was that it makes it easier for people to keep track kind of their progress. Like, oh, this is your checkpoint, so now you've exited, you can take a break and then go back in with all of your effort. Like, I get it. Like, there's absolutely pros and cons to each one. But I just, the feel of an epic raid is lost. I mean, actually, I think another part of it is developing the road that connects Raid 1 with Raid 2 is a lot of time to develop the actual resources to do that. But they use it on the 24-mans, and they do take shortcuts there. They do take the shortcuts with things like, you know, there's a, what, in Weeping City, there's literally a tower where you climb it, you're at the bottom of the tower. Your goal is to get to the top of the tower. The tower would take maybe 15 to 20 seconds to climb, but they give you like a jump, like from the bottom to the top when you go to do that. So it's like, I don't really see an excuse why they can't. It's just that this checkpoint system, they would need to actually implement a checkpoint system. It's been done before. It can be done. It's not, I don't want to say it's not hard to do because they don't know what their infrastructure is like, but it's very doable. It's been around for a long time. So yeah, I completely agree. And 2, is there any chance that normal Savage split will be scrapped? So originally, Yoshi P back in, I think in 3.1, said if it were up to him, he would actually have 3 difficulties, where he'd have a story, a normal mode, which is like an actual challenge to some level, and then like a savage mode, so they could make 3 difficulties basically, and they could actually sort of make it for everyone. But I think he's kind of been hearing how people don't necessarily want to have 3 different avenues to fight the same boss, kind of. And that's why when the level 5 CEO was on, the level 5 CEO goes, you know, obviously these were scripted. He wasn't surprised or blindsided by this question. Level 5 CEO goes, you know, I really liked it better when it was like Coil, where it was 1 difficulty. It just felt a lot more rewarding to get through and unlock the next part of the story. So Yoshida, instead of saying, you know, oh, well, this is how we decided we're going to do it, like he did maybe 4 or 5 months prior, he instead said, well, we haven't decided what the final, what we're gonna do for next raid tier, for 4.0, for the next expansion. So we're looking at the options, we're weighing the options of having a story mode come later. He pretty much said they don't know what they're gonna do yet for 4.0, if they're gonna keep the 2 different difficulties or move back to 1. I'm personally a fan of the idea of releasing the 1 difficulty, not calling it Savage, not giving it a fancy name, just saying here's your raid, and then later on releasing a story mode, so that way everybody's happy at some point. It also means you don't need to spam normal mode to get gear for the Savage mode, and then by that point you're sick of the boss, you know what I mean? So they have a few options, we'll see which direction they decide to go, but he didn't rule it out entirely, which is always a good thing. And next question, hello mister, important question. Oh man, I'll be the judge of that, okay? When you are the off-tank of an 8-person battle, and the boss has started running around the arena, what is an acceptable amount of time to wait for the main tank to get control of the situation? So, okay, we're talking about an 8-person battle. We're not talking about a static. We're talking about, like, you joined it through the Duty Finder or the Mentor Roulette. The acceptable amount of time is when it 3 seconds, maybe. The problem is you need to kind of make a judgment call. Do you know the boss's rotation? Does it have like something? Does it have a huge cleave coming up that's going to literally kill everyone who is looking away? And then you also have to consider, why don't you just main tank? Like at that point, you may just have to accept the fact that it's probably going to be a wipe, and you take on the main tank responsibilities on the next pull. Just be like, let me main tank this. I want to main tank this, and then let's see if they insist on the main tank. If they insist on being the main tank or are upset that I stole aggro, I have no problem letting them have the boss again. I'm just trying to help out the whole party and get things under control. I'm not interested in having a tank warrior. I'd rather just get through the fight. Yeah, I mean, ultimately it comes down to don't leave the responsibility to him. If you do, I mean, I've seen plenty of people do it. You just go, oh, well, the main tank lost aggro. And that's it. And it's like, and then it just destroys the entire party, and everyone looks, hey, it's the main tank. The main tank didn't hold aggro. They're not going to look at the off tank and go, what the hell were you doing the whole time? If the main tank dies, and then you wait a while, though, that's where I see the most issues in, like, 24-mans, where, like, the main tank of a boss dies, and all of the other tanks are now scrambling to do something. And some of them just don't even bother, like, fuck it, I'm the off tank, let the other guy do it. And then the other tank goes, fuck it, I'm the off tank, let the other guy do it. And then all of a sudden, nobody's tanking the boss. So that's an issue I see more often in 24-mans, really. But in organized content, this doesn't really become an issue. You just immediately know, like, the main tank lost aggro, the main tank lost aggro. There's not much you're really going to do about that that's going to work well, because then you either have to provoke and omit. Because if you have to provoke and then you have to omit the ability to do a tank swap, like, everything just goes to shit. The main tank needs to do what the main tank does. If he can't do that, you need to step in for him. Alright, next question. Happy 100 episodes, High Lord Happy. I like how you put all the H's in all of that, but then you took the H out of how and wrote ow with an apostrophe, and I know that's how. How you doing? I will give you a first-time bonus since I did not do so during my first question. That's fair. It's late, but it's fair. Like 2 weeks ago, so here's a free jump potion with a server transfer potion. Well, I don't need that, but... okay, or it will be useful when the issue I ask about is addressed, if it is necessary. Anyways, my question is, should transferring or populating lower population servers be explicitly and actively incentivized by the developers? Do they even need to be, and how should developers go about incentivizing them? So, I've seen this, I don't know what game I've seen this in before, but I've seen servers with lower populations basically get, like, things like increased experience points from monsters, or from open world events, or from quests. I don't know what game that's in, but I've seen it where lower population servers basically get buffs, server-wide buffs, as long as the server remains within a certain tier of active player base. The problem is that a lot of servers don't lack an active player base. They lack an active rating base. That's the one thing that people mix up. They'll be like, oh, my server doesn't have anybody on it. It's like, no, it has plenty of people on it. And that's why you see people who rep that server all the time. What you don't have is a lot of people incentivized to do rating, or you can't get in with the people who are already incentivized. On top of that, there's the very clear option of just allowing for free transfers off of populated servers, and then forcing people to pay to get onto the populated servers. The thing is, what real incentive? That's not really an incentive to transfer to a new server. That's a, well, if you ever decide to go anywhere else, it's free. It's not really a, hey, it's free, I should do that. Why would I do that? Is fucking all the raiders are on Gilgamesh anyway. So that's pretty much, those are pretty much ideas you could go with, but I don't know that it's their responsibility. I think it's just the best to make things as accessible as possible regardless of server. So things like mega servers or cross-server, the cross-server party finder that they're working on, I feel like that's the more important thing, is to have that so anybody can play with anybody on the same data center. Eventually, I think that they need to go away from data centers kind of entirely and just put NA, EU, JP, and then that's it. Everyone's on together. Basically, all of Europe is on together because they already only have one data center, and then Japan has the 3 and North America has the 2. So it's like, come on, like, Europe already has it. Like, that's some next level technology right there. Clearly. And next one. Hey, Happy, how you doing? I'm doing alright. Alright, wow, 100 episodes of hashtag MWMH. Guys, that's Mondays with Mr. Happy. I was off camera because I was whispering into the microphone. It's like a reverse Tazon day. AKA MHM. Congrats. Did you ever think this series would go so well? Not my question, by the way. As is customary, I bequeath you 100 more episodes and 100 blank blank. Oh, Umbrights. Well, I don't need 100 of them, but I can always start on a second one. Since it's going to be a long video, let's get right to it with the questions. All right, he's got quite a few questions. So first of all, to answer that one, I mean, I was hoping it did well enough to do 100 episodes of it, and it still does well enough to do 100 episodes of it. Besides, I get to record it during my live stream now, and it seems like the live stream enjoys it, so it's a twofer. I like it. One, what has been your best experience in starting with Mondays with Mr. Happy? It's honestly, the best experience is when people don't necessarily just ask like a generic Final Fantasy XIV question or kind of reaches outside the boundaries of that. Those are the questions I definitely enjoy the most, as long as they're appropriate. Some of them are incredibly inappropriate, like what are your beliefs on, you know, politics or something like that. It's like, that's just grounds for like a disaster, pretty much, because I'm not somebody who's political at all. I'm not somebody who watches a lot of sports. Like I keep up with like esports, and I watch and I play Pokemon Go, and I watch some shows on Netflix, and I eat a lot of delicious foods. Like food is my other like really big, I would call food a hobby practically for me, because I'm always willing to eat something that I haven't had before, and it's always exciting for me to share and talk about that. So my best experience is usually memes and answering questions that aren't necessarily just generic Final Fantasy XIV questions. 2, since Dragoons were sort of the focal drive for the expansion, you said that you think monks may be in the next. I said that monks would make the most sense. I don't necessarily think they will be. I think that sort of making a job an icon of an expansion is not necessarily a good idea, because it kind of takes away, with Dragoon being the kind of primary job of Ishgard, it kind of takes away from Dark Knight Machinist and Astrologian, because it's kind of less of the focal point, even though these are the 3 new jobs. So I don't think that as much as monks will probably make an appearance in All Amigo, I don't think they'll be focal to it like Dragoon was. 3, this is more Mr. Happy related than Final Fantasy, but are you going to sell the Hap Army gear again? Yeah, so we've actually had a lot of talk about that. I personally feel like I'm not like a big shot, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a very middle of the pack to lower end kind of YouTuber and Twitch broadcaster. I mean, the fact that we have what we have, and the fact that this is even possible for me to do kind of as a living, is kind of an oddity in itself. Like, if you look at kind of the size of my viewer base, and you look at the frequency of video, and you look at the frequency of stream, and you look at the average view, like, nothing really adds up, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm grateful for anything that does come to the broadcast. Every new viewer who says it's their first time, who thanks me for watching a guide. And that's another high point, going back to question number 1, is when people just show up in the broadcast and ask me and just say, hey man, first time here, I used your guide for this, it's been great, I watched a bunch of other videos, I hope you make another one for this. That's always good. That's always motivation, and it always reminds me that I am doing something good, and people are appreciative of it. So when it comes to the gear though, it's like, is that enough? Like, is any of that appreciation enough to really make the gear always available? Especially because when you make something always available, it also, you usually have to give something up in return. Obviously, the first one is how much money is actually made. And I know that's not something people want to hear, but when it comes to broadcasting, like, when it's your livelihood, that is something that comes into consideration. There's also the breadth of things you're making available. Like, are people even going to use these things? How much investment time-wise is this going to take? How much do I have to upkeep it? On top of that, is there really even a demand for it? Like, if I sold the shirt year-round, what would the demand be like? It would just be there. And if I don't talk about it, people don't know it's there. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. I like to do things in short bursts so they become focal points. I feel like that, as a broadcaster, is, if you're kind of in my league, kind of like smaller to middle, is far smarter to do in the first place. So there's a lot of questions. And on top of that, one of the biggest things is, usually if you have a store, it's not a first party store, you're usually giving away the art and the assets to a company, and they now have the rights to it. That's probably the greatest concern when you're selling something consistently throughout the year. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And the one thing I'll tell you I am definitely most comfortable selling all the time is the coffee, because working with Josh is amazing. So, like I said, there's a lot of questions, but Mel and I have considered it. We actually do have a DBH store that's completely unpopulated, just because the terms of service, it's just, it's hard to think of giving away art that I commissioned from somebody else and now giving these other people the rights to it. Like, there's a lot of logistics that go into that. So it's a very difficult question to answer, but yes, the Happy Army shirt will be available again, probably for the 3rd year. I don't know what, it's going to be a completely different design. It won't be the same design as the 2nd year if we do one for the 3rd year. So just keep that in mind as well. And like always, thanks for everything you do. You're a blessing. Well, wishes on another 100 episodes. Thank you, my good sir. They were 3 very well thought out questions, and I had fun answering them. Let's move on to the next one. All right, next question. This looks like it's going to be a fairly long one, because I can see more of it than you guys can right now. Salutations, Mr. Happy, in bolded, smiley face. First of all, congrats on episode 100. Thank you. This is my first time posting, and from my understanding, it is customary to make an offering, so of a free pass for early access to Palace of the Dead. You don't understand how much that would help. If I could do Palace of the Dead this week when it comes out next week, I would need 3 other people to do it, because you can't solo it without any gear, unless I really want to grind it out that much. Because then next week is I Am Setsuna also, so it's like, I hate that 3.35 and I Am Setsuna fell on the same friggin' day. Anywho, I'm still fairly new to level 60 Scholar. Like your input on some of their post 50 skills. I have level 60 White Mage. Feels like the Heavensward skills were pretty good. The level 60, the Heavensward skills for White Mage were fantastic. I love the skills. They were easily some of the best skills added to any job. Just more damage, more healing, more MP. Just, you're a threat. You're like, you really feel like a major threat on all levels with the direct healing, with the healing over time. It's just so good. Tetragrammaton. So good. Anyway, I feel like Scholar's post 50 skills, other than Indom and Dissipation, are rather lacking. Honestly, most people consider Dissipation kind of lacking, just because of its uses are very limited. I'll tell you what, I'm very, very surprised that you don't like the ability to spread the Adlo shield. So saying that spreading Adlo is a moot point compared to Sucker, a non-crit Adlo is still better than a Sucker. So even spread across the entire party, it is more party shielding. Eye for an eye, not necessarily always that important to spread to everyone. It's mostly important when multiple people are being hit by multiple enemies. That way you can apply eye for an eye on all of them, and that's mostly when it's like unavoidable that somebody's going to be targeted by an attack. On top of that, if the Adlo crits, when you get like a 6k crit Adlo and you extend that to the entire party, and the big scary raid damage attack comes out, and it does like a 1.5 thousand damage, it feels so good. Like, so good. Trust me. That one is amazing. But the eye for an eye isn't as important, but it does have its uses occasionally. The extra heal is also really good for burst healing, because a lot of the times you're not Adlo spamming as a scholar, you're spamming Physic. So if you need the big heal and you don't need the shield, that's what it's used for. Very situational, which is why a lot of people have some kind of... They don't feel as good about the new Scholar skills as they do about the White Mage skills. Because literally all 5 of the new White Mage skills, you use those 100% of the time. Every fight you're using a Size, every fight you're laying down an Asylum, every fight, assuming you're actually DPSing, you're putting down an Arrow 3 and then spamming Stone 3 if you have the time. Every fight you're using Tetragrammaton for a free heal, a free instant cast heal. Like, all of those skills feel really good. Whereas Scholars are all situational. Because Scholar was already a God tier job at level 50. So if they got even more God tier stuff, even though honestly the spreading of the Adlo shield is, then it would be kind of ridiculous. Also, Broil is just a more dedicated DPS tool. I personally like having a higher DPS tool because Ruin 1 sucks. But, I mean, Broil's more MP. It's still way better than their other options were. It is a net gain. Whereas, you know... White Mage, like, they could have survived without Arrow 3 and Stone 3, but those skills fucking rock. This is kind of making up for the shitty skills that you had at level 50. The few shitty skills you had at level 50. Alright, next question. Roars and salutations, Haps. Happy 100th episode. Thank you. Got a nice and simple question for you this week. Why do people still have so much trouble with haircut and penetration? Giggity. Mechanic. I main tanked and off tanked the fight in one of the tanks that won't turn her, but instead keep her very still, even so much that I'll use hollow ground to avoid getting stacked from the line AoE. That's fair. The line AoE most people ignore anyway, so what are you really saving, right? And especially because of the haircut that comes right after it, people always screw that up. So that I'm not against that idea. But ever since the first week, dodged 99% of the haircuts going out and never even run halfway across the room. It's all about knowing the fight. So a lot of people go into 24-mans kind of half paying attention. And the haircut mechanic, the only giveaway of a haircut mechanic is looking directly at the boss's hair and looking at which one grows. Most people in this game, and this is the game itself that's kind of caused this, the game has promoted this kind of way of reacting. Most people wait to see an AoE and then try to dodge it. That is how the game has trained you from the very early levels to look at enemies and try to determine how to avoid their attacks. That causes people to not pay attention to which side the hair is coming out and to not necessarily even pay attention to the patterns that a boss has. It's very clear that after the mechanic where you have the axe and the hammer extensions, where it's like 9 of them, or it's 5, anywhere from 5 to 9 of them, that it's going to be a haircut immediately after. So you need to be paying attention to what side of the boss you're on, or you need to be prepared to sprint to the other side as soon as those extensions are done executing their mechanics. Also, the charge. She picks a hair side before she even starts the charge, and then charges an attack that takes like 7 seconds, then dashes, then haircuts, but people aren't paying attention. They're just like, oh, let me get out of the way of the dodge so I can keep DPSing. Pretty much just people just don't pay attention. They take only what they learned in the early levels and don't apply any sort of personal responsibility or knowledge, or even an attempt to I was gonna say retend to have any sort of retention rate on mechanics of the boss itself. All right, next question. I did not hit. I already know this. I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mike. Hello. My name's not Mark, thankfully, but you called me Mike. Have some other thoughts on the 100th puns I could go through at you, and yet another quest roulette. All right, so question roulette. Let's see. You know what? I haven't picked the first question in a while. Let's go with that. How do you feel about an anime series set in Final Fantasy XIV? Hey, it's working well for Final Fantasy 15, isn't it? I mean, shit. Why not, right? Like, I don't pursue anime. Like, Dragon Ball Super is the only anime that I'll watch. And I put anime in quotes because friggin' anime elitists out there are like, oh, Dragon Ball's not real anime. It was on fucking Cartoon Network. It wasn't real anime. Yeah, I don't give a shit. It's anime, okay? That's what it is. Anyway, so, but I don't actively pursue watching anime. So, like, if there was a Final Fantasy 14 one, I'd probably watch it because it's Final Fantasy 14, but not necessarily because I want an anime version of it. You know, that doesn't matter to me. But I would watch it. Cool. I wonder if it would just be a rehash of, like, the story. In which case, man, we know which episodes are going to be filler, right? 2.1 to 2.55. Anyway, maybe they can make it more like Dragon Ball Kai where they just cut it out. But anyway, yeah, I'd be cool with it. Why not? All right. Next question. This question's so long, I can scroll to the right on the question. Look at this. Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. That's 100 Ys if you count them up. Wow, that was very thematic of you. I don't think I said 100 Ys in all that time. First time asking, so you get a bonus of 100 lore. See what I did there? I want to start off by congratulating you on your huge and outstanding accomplishment. Love the show, and it's part of my Monday routine. Glad it's a part of your routine, my friend. Question, what difficulty do you think the raids will be in 3.4? This is a good question. Harder or easier than Midas? And will they keep it consistent and keep it to 4 raids? Lastly, what do you think the new Primal will be? So, 2 very good questions. Ones I've talked about on the live stream, but I haven't actually spoken about them here on Mondays with Mr. Happy. I think that they will be slightly easier than Midas. So the thing about Midas versus Gordius is Gordius, the first 2 bosses, pretty easy. Third boss, massive wall compared to the third one, and then the fourth boss, even more massive of a wall. Just massive gear walls, pretty much. And then even then, A4 still unnerfed in a sense. Bullet. I mean, I only say that because people consider the obtaining of gear as well as the echo nerfs, and it is. Or it just makes it easier, I should say. It's still probably the hardest fight to execute properly, but it was such a disjointed fight in terms of the way it was designed, where Nisi was completely abusable, and because of the game's own sort of built-in latency, it was completely buggable and just exploitable, and it just a lot was wrong with it. And then they move over to Midas, where the DPS checks are a lot less severe, but if you bring that DPS anyway, it just makes those fights so much easier. A lot of phase skipping. Like with the very first one, A5, you can skip the entire first set of bombs where he turns you into a bird if you save your cooldowns and burst him from 90% to 64% before he goes big again. And you're capable of doing things like that where you skip kind of the more difficult parts by bringing enough DPS or by making sure that you don't have to go too far into the encounter to get to the harder parts. So there's a lot that goes into if it'll be harder or easier. I think it will be easier mechanically. So idea, I guess, with Midas was very mechanically heavy. I expect this to be less mechanically heavy and on a similar note to the DPS checks. I think A7 Savage is probably a good example of the difficulty I'd expect, where it's there and it's learnable and it's very clear how you've screwed up in a fight there. But at the same time, it still wants you to pay attention. It still needs you to learn the fight. A7's an example of a fight that, while it's not necessarily perfectly designed, it's kind of the best rounded in the sense where everything kind of comes together for your average raid fight. Between the amount of DPS required, between the amount of attention you need to pay, between how easy it is. There's just everything I love about A7 is in those words right there. So I think that there's I think that that's probably a good example. A bad example would be A6, where the fight barely works for the first week. So let's try to avoid that. And as for the new Primal, we already know that Zervan and Sophia, the demon and the goddess, the 2 remaining members of the Warring Triad, will be next on the list. I actually think we're going to fight both of them in one encounter. I don't think it's going to be we're going to fight one in 3.4 and one in 3.5. I think we're going to fight the demon and the goddess as one encounter in 3.4, and then 3.5 will be the Tower of Gods as a primal fight, kind of against like all 3 of the Warring Triad at once, plus a few new mechanics. I'm looking forward to that. Almost like Ultima Weapon kind of was back in the day, where it was the 3 primals, and then it was the actual Ultima Weapon itself. Kind of like that. I think it'll kind of be like that fight. Alright, next question. Congrats on the 100th video. Thank you, my friend. What is this thing you hear every so often about 80% of the player base is quote-unquote bad? I hear this every so often, and I don't agree with it. Some players simply just need the opportunity to practice mechanics and job rotations enough to get better at certain situations, but oftentimes elitist players don't give them a chance and quit on them. So there's there is a subset of people that this is the case, where they're never given the opportunity to really, get their feet wet. That is absolutely true. There is a section of the player base that this is true for. The bigger problem is that there's a very large portion of the community that doesn't want to improve. And that's where you often hear the stories, the horror stories on Reddit, where somebody sees, oh, I see this black mage, he's just spamming Fire 3. So I go, hey man, I just want you to know that Fire 3, you're not supposed to spam it. And I want to let you know, because I think that other people will probably give you a much harder time about it, so I just want to give you some friendly advice. That is probably the nicest way to tell someone that they are not playing the job correctly. You know how often that's met with a, shut up, I'm going to play the way I want to? Do you know how often that's met with that? And it's not like that stops when you hit level 60. It's really common at level 60, where you see people that are just doing anywhere from 400 to 700 DPS at level 60 and like item level 210, 220 stuff. And that's not a matter of not having the opportunity to practice. That's about you not caring about how you perform. You could never step foot in a dungeon and practice the rotation and get it down. Yes, you probably won't perform it precisely the way you want to, going from like a dummy practice to an effective encounter practice, but it's still, you will do better than 700. I can guarantee you will do better than 700. And yes, there are of course situations where there are players who are not nice, like I just said, where they go, ew, noob, what the fuck? The fuck is this scrub using fucking Fire 3 for? Look, he's just spamming Fire 3. You fucking piece of shit. Uninstall. Yes, there's absolutely people that act like that, and those people, for lack of a better word, are scum. But well, there's much better words for it, but scum's the word I'm going to go with. But that's just how it is. I mean, when you have as many people playing the game as you have Final Fantasy XIV, you're going to run into those types of people. I would agree that the majority of the player base does not care to improve. 80% might be a little bit of excess, but even, let's even say that 80% were legitimately like the players I just described, the ones that want no sort of level of improvement. They just want to play the game however they want, whatever. They don't care about playing better or anything. Even within the remaining 20%, the players that even do get their feet wet, a lot of them are overly sensitive or are not willing to hear advice. It's just, and by the way, let me rephrase. We're talking strictly about North America right here. We're strictly talking about North America and Europe in this 80%. Japan is like, they're machines, dude. They just, everything, even the not good players in Japan are just like, they get a thumbs up from me. That's like 10% of their players over there. So yeah, that's just that. It is what it is. You know, just the majority, at least 51% does not care to improve. All right, next question. Hey, Mr. Happy. So I am capped on my lore and have been for a week. I play 3 jobs and I'm not looking to expand and don't have any retainer space. You, sir, have a hoarding problem. I know all about that. We can be hoarders together. Boom. I didn't punch you in the face. That was a pound it. Anyway, what can I do with this lore? Seems like I can only descent up to. Do you? Okay, so you said you have these 3 jobs and not looking to expand. I'm assuming that means you're not looking to get lore for more than the 3 jobs you already have. So don't spend it. I mean, that's the answer. Wait till it's a spammable currency and then buy crafting materials with it next patch. I'm not kidding. If you seriously have every piece of lore gear you need for those 3 jobs. That's what I believe you're trying to tell me. I'm not going to math it out and say it's impossible. It doesn't matter to me, because if you play like Bard Machinist, that's not that unreasonable. On top of that, if you do Savage, again, not unreasonable. But just save it. And then buy a shit ton of crafting materials when 3.4 comes out and make that guap, and you're good to go. That's it. Don't even need to spend it. It's not a waste. It's a virtual currency. It is what it is. It won't be a waste when you just buy mad guap from it. Alright, so that was the last question over on the Dream Network forums. However, we still have a little bit of time, so I am going to open it up to the Twitch chat right now. We're going to see what kind of questions. I've done a lot of that this episode, where I combine the beginning of the 2 words I'm about to say back to back. Quinda. I can't remember which ones I said earlier, but I'm sure people will let me know in the comment section. I know you will. But anyway, let's see what the Twitch chat has to ask. Alright, so the first question we're going to take from the Twitch chat. Mr. Happy, for everything you've done as a streamer and a YouTube content creator, what's one thing you've always wanted to do but haven't been able to do as of yet? That's a good one. I guess, I mean, there's a few things. So the first one, and this is kind of just a thing, is like Shoutcast the tournament. Like I want to do that. I keep trying to set it up so like the games that I play on like subscriber appreciation day are usually good to like cast. I would love to cast a game of Dead by Daylight, but there's no spectator mode, obviously probably to prevent cheating, but there's no spectator mode in the private game, so I can't do that. The culling, same deal. I would love to spectate that, but I believe only on tournament realms can you actively spectate. Arc, another game. Basically, I really like shoutcasting tournaments or arena style games like Survival of the Fittest for Arc. I find a lot of fun in that because you don't need a lot of game knowledge to kind of get excited about those and speak about them. And I would love the opportunity to do that, but I have to create that opportunity. I can't just expect it to fall into my lap, which is why I've kind of considered us going and doing like one weekend, just having Arc like as a thing, like on Sunday, like regardless of the vote, like just go like, guys, we're doing Arc today. This is our server and we are going to compete with each other. And then if I ever want to, if the server is big enough, I can just die and then immediately go and shoutcast the remainder of the game. It's something I'm totally up for doing in a game that accepts as many people into it as possible. But it's just, I need to do that. I want to do more culling ones as well. So we may actually do some culling matches sometime in the near future. I would just like to do some more shoutcasting as a whole. And the other thing, what was the other thing that I wanted to say in response to that question? I think it was, I want to hit I do eventually want to hit a point where I do feel comfortable playing any game. And I'm a lot more comfortable now than I used to be playing most games. Like even today playing Dead by Daylight, it was perfectly fine. It was a good stream. I was awful at the game and I felt really bad for being awful at the game, but it was still a good stream overall. I would like to be able to do that with any game. Like Overwatch, I pretty much ruled that out. Like my channel it doesn't cut it. And I'm not gonna sit there and just destroy my channel with Overwatch pretty much. Just for anyone who's wondering reference, Overwatch is officially the lowest viewed game I've ever had on my channel during a mainstream broadcast, not during an additional broadcast in the evening, during the day mainstream broadcast. I've never had a game lower viewed than Overwatch, just because it's super saturated as well. But overall, it's not a game that really clicks with our community. So I'm looking into just playing more RPGs because I love RPGs. Like I can always play an RPG. And as long as it's doing quasi-well, I feel comfortable playing it. That's why we have Final Fantasy 15 at the end of the summer. That's why I'm considering playing Elder Scrolls Online again. I haven't played it since beta because it just didn't click, but I know they're doing some things that I actually really appreciate, so may see that again on PC, not the console versions in the near future. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I kind of want to do, or that I wish to do and I still want to do. Evolve is another one that would be good for shoutcasting if they have a spectator mode, that is. So yeah, I guess that's really the point I want to hit, where I feel like if I go live, I feel comfortable being live, regardless of what it is I play. If I play a game that's like offset, and it's still lower than average, it's still good. But I want to feel that way. That's like the one desire I have over everything else. All right, here's another good question. All right, so Mr. Happy, what is the lore behind the rock in your background? Now, it seems like a stupid question to take when I literally pick and choose the questions out of my Twitch chat. But it is actually a funny story. So, it's not a funny story, but to me I like the story. So, obviously, this is Dwayne. You guys get the joke. If you don't know who Dwayne The Rock Johnson is, Google him, all right? Most of you know who he is. So that joke actually goes back several years. Achievement Hunter, back when Brown Man, you guys know him, he's a huge broadcaster now. He was a member of Rooster Teeth and Achievement Hunter. And every time somebody mentioned a rock, he would just go, Dwayne? Like, he would just do that every time, and I thought it was hilarious, because I'd always done that back in, like, high school and shit. So I was like, ha ha ha, you know, that's funny, get it, Dwayne The Rock. And everyone just kind of goes like this, and they feel uncomfortable, and it's just hilarious for me. And now he's an emote on our channel, and he'll probably be on a shirt at some point in the near future. So everything, it just kind of works. You know, I find it funny, I find it interesting, and on top of that, Let's Play and Achievement Hunter were kind of like the first YouTube channel that I really followed. Obviously, they have been creating content for a long, long time now. Not just strictly on YouTube, they also have their website. But I always got to see what they did and the way they interacted and the way that, like, they were definitely one of the first YouTube channels that made me want to get into YouTube. And then eventually when Twitch came around, Twitch broadcasting, even though they didn't broadcast ever. But I was happy when I saw Brown Man make the switch over to Twitch, because I was like, he's going to do it eventually. Like, I can just see it from I was there for his very first stream ever, and I was like, he's saying right now he doesn't want to be partnered, but he's going to want to be partnered. I know for a fact he's going to want it. He's just having way more fun here than it seems like he has in his videos nowadays. So that's the lore behind it. It's an Achievement Hunter, or specifically a Brown Man, what's the word I'm looking for? Homage. All right, the next question we have from the Twitch chat says, Mr. Happy, what do you want out of the diadem for it to be improved later in its life cycle? So, that is a very hard question to answer, mostly because I liked the idea of the diadem at first. It's old school. It's an homage to old school games where you literally just went and killed enemies to get gear. Like, that's all it was. What ultimately it came down to is the gear, it just wasn't balanced with the rest of the game. It was balanced around chance. And granted, yeah, the chances of you getting something really good in there was low, but at the same time, with everyone who was doing it, it's bound to happen that the majority of people start to pick up at least one or two pieces that make it seem like, why am I even raiding at this point? I'll just do diadem all day. And then you don't enjoy diadem, so you hate yourself for it. It definitely needs more objectives. Like, there's cool things that happen there that mean nothing. Like, for example, when the weather happens, it's not hyper electricity, it's something else, but it's the Ultima, the Proto Ultima weather from Azazla. When that happens in the diadem, 9 little Rafflasias, spawn around the arena at all the starting areas, and if you kill them, you get a Proto Ultima exoplating. That's cool, but it has no effect on, like, anything else, pretty much. It's just a neat little event that happens. The events like that need to have more meaning. There need to be zone-wide events that are happening. Almost, I don't want to say fates, but, like, things along those lines. Like, if Proto Ultima spawns in an island, a random island on the map, and he's got a shield that's protecting him, right? And the only way to disable the shield is to do something akin to the fate, the every 2-day fate that happens in Az's Law, where you go and you destroy the generator, and there's creatures that are from Coil defending it, and you do that, and it's like, oh, you know, Proto Ultima is trying to turn the diadem trying to initiate a protocol that sucks the energy out of the air crystals in the diadem and fuses them with the energy of Az's Law. And then you just do that. Like, things like that would be really cool, because then all of a sudden everyone in the zone, it's like, okay, this person go to the north, this person go to the west, this person go to the south, this person go to the east. And then everybody beats. I was like, all right, everyone gather in the middle. And then you have the boss in the middle who's actually doing something. It's more interesting. As well as making things like caves and making rare enemies spawning in caves and making going into caves a little bit more satisfying, other than knowing there's going to be at least one chest in there every so often. Like, just a lot of thematic things, like objectives, things that get people going places in the map, and things that are adequately rewarding. They've shown that things like Aquapolis can be adequately rewarding without needing to throw the highest item level gear at it. You throw things like minions and music sheets and materia and gil, just flat gil and tomestones, and people will do it. That is good incentive for people, the things that are in the Aquapolis. And then Diadem has the added feature of having the gil, or having the gear in there. So if you give it all these kinds of rewards, all of a sudden it is a lot more desirable to people. So I want to see them make it so it's a lot more objective based, a lot less kill random enemies and hope to get loot based. That is my ultimate answer. To extend on that answer, something I have spoken about in the past, it's been months since I've said it, but somebody in the chat reminded me of it, and it is something that I definitely want. Reason to have gatherers in your group, a reason to defend gatherers, like actually defend them. Maybe it's a party-wide damage plus 15% buff. Maybe they can gather buffs for the party. Like, that would be crazy. I would definitely let someone run off, or I would definitely protect someone more if it was like, hey, increases drop rate of treasure chests by 20%, or increases gil gain from objectives by 10%. If you get those things from protecting a gatherer, that would be pretty cool. Or if gatherers could basically hit a node, and it increases sort of the rate of like a treasure chest spawning for everybody if there's more people around the person. I think that those are ways that they can improve the whole gatherer aspect as well. All right, so we're going to do 2 more questions from the Twitch chat, and then we're going to wrap this up. It's going to be a pretty long video, but it's the 100th episode. Who cares, right? All right, so Mr. Happy, what do you expect from the next expansion? Now, that's a very broad question, so it's hard to give specifics. Ultimately, I expect less than 3 jobs. I expect only 2 jobs to make it into the expansion. I know that sounds like shit to a lot of people, and it's completely unfounded. It's only based on how much stress it seems like developing the jobs has given the team, especially when they went from developing Ninja and then immediately went into developing 3 more jobs for the expansion. They also say it takes a year approximately to make a job from concept to finish, and it's 2 years between the expansions. So I could assume they have 2 teams that work on this, so it's not like that's all they work on. But at the same time, I feel like if they only release 2 jobs, it means there's more meaningful things they can do otherwise. They've shown us that they are willing to innovate on the formula. They are willing to do things, even if they're not necessarily well received, like Lords of Verminion, Diadem, Aquapolis, Deep Dungeon. They want things that are different. And I think that ultimately, they want to keep trying to do that innovation. I have a feeling they'll play it a little safe for 4.0, and they'll probably give us very much basic things, a main story, the new jobs. And of course, you won't need the 3.1 to 3.5 story to get to that point. We'll probably get a raid 2 weeks after the expansion comes out. We'll probably have, you know, a dungeon every 1 or 2 levels, like every 1 or 2 levels approximately, like a lot of the stuff you saw in Heavensward. I do expect that they'll have some sort of new content overall, though. I expect to have something similar to, I can't remember the name of the content in 11. It was Wings of the Goddess, where you went around and you had to basically defend or take over sort of hamlets. And no, it's nothing like Final Fantasy XIV 1.0's Hamlet. And if, like, the beast tribes controlled them, then you needed to, you know, fight for them. I expect to see something like that. I expect to see something like that where we're going to campaigns. That's what they were called, campaigns. Where you have to go to little, basically, outposts, and you have to rid them of the of local threats, pretty much. I expect a lot of that to get people out into the world and to give people incentive, on top of hunts as well. I expect to see a little bit more open worldness. I also do expect our expansion to have a lot of islands out in the east, because I looked at the map recently, and Alamigo, while it is sort of what's remaining of the continent, I don't know that it's big enough to necessarily host an entire expansion. There's a lot of water to the east of our current lands as well, and obviously people think we might go to Althard. I don't. I think we're staying on Eorzea for this one to release Alamigo and bring them back into the Eorzean Alliance, although I expect a lot of friction between Gridania and Alamigo. I expect some content out in the water. I don't expect all the content to be water related, and I don't necessarily expect us to have like underwater raids or underwater dungeons. I just expect swimming to kind of be a basic feature that we see, and we see some very basic swimming principles. I think Yoshi P kind of knows swimming is not necessarily a popular idea. As much as it adds verticality, exactly like flying does, it just doesn't work the same when you have to try to balance combat underwater and quests underwater. There's something about it that just is very, very unsettling, just fighting on that Z-axis. It's cool occasionally, but not cool all the time. So I expect to see something water-themed as well, especially because he said when they picked the 3.0 theme, it was either going to be sky or water, and they went with sky. So water is the only reasonable conclusion after that. All right, and the last question I'm going to be taking for the day is a very simple one. It's just a question, what games am I looking forward to coming this holiday season? So there's actually a lot of games coming out in the latter half of 2016 that I'm incredibly excited for. I don't know when Horizon Zero Dawn comes out. I don't think that's this year. I think that's next year. But that's a game I'm excited for. Recore is a game I'm excited for. The new Deus Ex, very excited for. We have Final Fantasy 15, obviously. We have I Am Setsuna coming out it'll be 8 days from when you guys see this video over on YouTube, because it's July 19th. On top of that, we have Patch 3.4. We have Fan Festival, which isn't a game, but it's an event, and it's an event I'm excited for. We also have, what's some other ones? We have World of Final Fantasy. We have Kingdom Hearts 2.8, which I've never played Dream Drop Distance, so that's big for me. I'm also looking forward to watching the movie for the Unchained, the Key Unchained movie. I forget what it's called right now. Back cover. That's what it's called. Kingdom Hearts back cover. You also have Volume Point 2 for Birth by Sleep. And there's a ton of games I'm missing right now. There's actually a lot of games in the latter half that look really, really good. Yeah, okay, so it's February 2017 for Horizon Zero Dawn. And then I know that Persona 5 is also next year. We're also waiting on Zodiac Age, which isn't going to be this year. That's going to be next year as well. Man, there's a lot of games. I'm looking forward to that. I'm also I like keeping my eye on the indie games or the mobile games. I don't know when Final Fantasy 11 mobile is launching either, and I now have a pretty reliable means of playing that through BlueStacks. So, and then there's Monster Hunter Generations, which comes out very soon. I think that's this Friday, Monster Hunter Generations. I don't know that I'll have the time to pick that up because I'll basically only have 3 days to play it before it's pretty much, there's no way I'll have the time to play it after that. Yeah, there's a lot of games. So keep your eye on all of those, because if any of them are PC, I mean, there's always the chance we'll sell them on Green Man Gaming, which, you know, you guys have that discount code for me, the 20%, that works 99% of the time. So Jeff, hi Jeff, definitely, I've just had so many flubs this episode. Definitely keep your eyes on that and always be looking to get that discount for it on Green Man Gaming if I ever have an event for it. So, on that note, that's going to be my last question for Mondays with Mr. Happy. It was a long one, but it was a good one. Giggity. Thank you for asking all your questions this week. I'm actually going to leave open that email address for video questions. I kind of liked the video questions, and we'll do probably a few of those a week, assuming we ever have video questions that are submitted. If there are no video questions, I'm not going to force it, but I enjoyed it. I feel like it's a way to kind of get to, I don't know, like get to know. There's a word I'm looking for there that I can't really think of, but it feels more like connected sort of as a community, like we have that level. It's like, so if anybody, as you guys know, I refer to Rooster Teeth all the time. Like I said, they were a big inspiration to me early on when I was a lot younger for getting into this eventually. They have AWU, which is the Achievement Hunter weekly update, and they had the start of it, they have a bunch of people saying this is AWU number 317 from some prairie in Texas, or this is AWU number 317 from the top of the Eiffel Tower, or things like that. I don't know. It's just cool getting to see the people who actually support the channel. You know, it's just something feels good about that as the person who is doing the video every week. So again, videos on the side right here. Remember, by the way, for those of you who didn't know SteelSeries, I mentioned it in my Rival 700 review not too long ago, but there's a 15-year anniversary giveaway. If you have not entered the basic prize that you may win, and they've actually added a bunch more prizes to it, is an ultimate setup. It's a keyboard, a headset, a mouse, and a mouse pad, your choice of any of them. And you also have a chance to win a trip to DreamHack, a trip to Seattle to tour the Valve headquarters, a gaming PC on top of the ultimate setup. So they just added more prizes to it. You have a little bit of time left. July 15th, I believe, is the deadline. Go check that out. It'll be them celebrating their 15 years of SteelSeries. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching this video this week. I'll see you next week for episode 101. And hey, 104 is a 2-year anniversary, right? So we got another anniversary coming up right away. So I will see you guys next time. And again, if you have those video questions, just check the email in the description of the video. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, take care.